Welcome to the grim world of crime, where reality often surpasses even the most chilling fantasies. Today, we'll recount a story that shocked Hong Kong and the entire world with its brutality and madness. Picture an ordinary Hello Kitty doll, a sweet symbol of childhood and innocence. Now, imagine that inside this doll lies a human skull. Disturbing, isn't it? This is merely the tip of the iceberg in a case that came to be known as the Hello Kitty murder. Brace yourselves. What you're about to hear may seem unbelievable, but remember, sometimes truth is more terrifying than any fiction. So, let's begin our descent into one of the most horrifying crimes in Hong Kong's history. This shocking story rocked not only Hong Kong, but the entire world in 1999 when a 23-year-old nightclub owner suddenly vanished. The tragedy that unfolded in this bustling metropolis became one of the most discussed and horrifying crimes of the late 20th century. A month after the young woman's disappearance, her remains were discovered in an ordinary apartment in a high-rise building, plunging the public into shock and sparking a wave of panic among local residents. However, as is often the case with high-profile crimes, numerous rumors and speculations emerged surrounding this case. Some even doubted the reality of the incident, considering it merely a terrifying urban legend designed to frighten Hong Kong's inhabitants. In our investigation, we will attempt to separate fact from fiction and, together with you, uncover what truly transpired in that fateful year of 1999. We will analyze available evidence, examine case materials, and try to reconstruct the true picture of this horrifying crime. In May 1999, an event occurred that would later become the starting point in uncovering one of the most brutal crimes in Hong Kong's history. A 14-year-old girl named Ah Fong walked into an ordinary police station located in a bustling district of the city. Her appearance didn't foreshadow anything unusual, but what she recounted made even the most seasoned police officers take notice. Trembling and nervously glancing around, began her story. The girl claimed she was being haunted by a woman's ghost. At first, the police officers treated her words with disbelief and even laughed, dismissing it as a teenager's vivid imagination. However, Ah Fong persisted and continued to insist on her story. With each word from the girl, the atmosphere in the station grew more tense. Ah explained that for the past few weeks, she had been suffering from the constant presence of a woman's ghost. But not just any ghost, a spirit that, according to her, was bound with electrical wire and tortured to death. The details the girl provided were so vivid and frightening that even the most skeptical officers began to listen. Despite Ah's persistence, most police officers still decided to dismiss her story, considering it a product of teenage fantasy. They couldn't have guessed that this account would become the key to solving a real and horrific crime. None of those present at the station that day could have imagined the terrifying events behind the frightened girl's words, and how this testimony would change the course of an investigation that would shock all of Hong Kong. She was alive, the girl said, her voice trembling with fear and excitement. Her remains are still in the apartment. I can show you. An oppressive silence filled the police station. Officers who had been skeptical moments ago now listened intently to every word Ah Fong said. Exchanging glances, they decided to investigate the girl's claims, and asked her to show them the apartment where, according to her, the spirit of a tortured woman resided. When Ah Fong led the police officers to the specified apartment, none of them were prepared for what they were about to see. As they stepped inside, the men were horrified. In the refrigerator, they found human body parts stored as if they were ordinary food items. But the most shocking discovery awaited them on the room's floor. There lay a small rag doll, which at first glance seemed like a harmless toy. It was a doll in the shape of the famous Hello Kitty, a popular character in Japanese pop culture. However, upon closer inspection, they found a human skull inside the doll, a gruesome testament to the tragedy that had occurred here. This horrifying revelation instantly turned the teenager's strange tale into a real criminal case. Later, the press and crime chronicles would refer to this story as the Hello Kitty murder. In Hong Kong, it would become one of the most brutal and infamous crimes in history, shocking not only the local community, but the entire world with its unprecedented cruelty and callousness. Fan Man-yee's tragic story began long before the fateful year of 1999. Abandoned by her parents in early childhood, she grew up in an orphanage, deprived of family warmth and support. These harsh circumstances largely determined her fate. As a teenager, Fan was drawn into the world of drugs. From the age of 16, she began to engage in prostitution in order to get money for another dose. Despite the difficult beginning, by the age of 22 Fan managed to achieve some success, becoming the owner of a nightclub. However, she was never able to overcome her drug addiction. In 1996, she married Eng Kai-wen, and gave birth to a son. It seemed that life began to get better, but the reality was much harsher. The relationship between the couple, both addicted to drugs, was extremely strained. Neighbors often complained about loud arguments and sounds of domestic violence coming from their apartment. Unable to withstand the constant conflicts, Fan often left her husband and child and left home for days at a time, taking refuge in local brothels. These episodes only exacerbated an already difficult family situation, creating a vicious circle of problems, from which Fan Man-yee was never able to escape. Fan Man-yee's lifestyle led her to meet a man she initially thought was perfect for her. In early 1997, when Fan was 23 years old, she met 34-year-old Chan Man-lok, a pimp and drug dealer. A relationship quickly developed between the two, and Chan became her regular client. Chan was a member of a local triad, and was part of the group along with Leung Xing Cho, 27, and Leung Wai Loon, 21. Chan also had a 14-year-old girlfriend, named Ah Ho Fong, whose real name was withheld by the court. This girl probably served as an object of personal pleasures for him. In the following days, Chan was engaged in perverted intimacy with Fong, who quickly became bored with the whole thing. The man behaved with her harshly and roughly, liked to have fun without limits. Fan was tired of tolerating such treatment and decided to leave his buddy, taking with him his wallet with a large sum of money. When Chan discovered the disappearance, he immediately ordered his buddies to find Fan. As a result, the girl was forced to return the entire stolen sum. But Chan didn't stop there. He continued to terrorize Fan, demanding more and more money and threatening to kill her. The situation became more and more tense and dangerous for Fan Man-yee. Fan Man-yee's situation worsened dramatically when his accomplices kidnapped her on Chan's orders. They hid her in an apartment on the third floor of a building in the busy shopping district of Sim Sha Sui. This place was not chosen by chance. The noise of the streets and the constant bustle hid what was happening in the apartment from prying eyes and ears. On the day of the kidnapping, Fang was brutally abused by 3 of Chan's accomplices. They not only beat her, but also repeatedly abused her. From that moment on, the apartment became a real torture chamber for the young woman. Chan, taking advantage of Fan's helpless position, began to bring clients to the apartment, who paid for the opportunity to abuse her. Chan took all the money he received in this way, completely ignoring the suffering of his victim. During periods when there were no clients, the 3 friends, led by Chan, continued to abuse Fan. The beatings became more and more brutal. First they beat her with their hands, then they moved on to kicking her. Particularly subtle was their demand that Fan smile, laugh, and talk about her happiness during the beatings. If she did not comply with these sadistic orders, the violence only escalated. A shocking aspect of this story is the involvement of Chan's 14-year-old girlfriend, Ah Fong. The teenage girl regularly came to the apartment where Fong was being held. While one of the men was raping the captive, Ah Fong seemed completely indifferent to what was happening. She spent her time playing video games or watching movies with the other co-conspirators, seemingly oblivious to the horror happening around her. Fan Man-yee's story gradually turned into a nightmare from which there seemed to be no way out. Later, the men got bored and used furniture and iron tools. The unfortunate Fan was hit with a table leg, had a flat iron pushed down her throat, and was hit on the head with a wooden stool. After a while, clients, seeing the girl's tortured body, refused to pay for intimacy with her. Then Chan and cronies left Fan to teach her a lesson for bad work. The men urinated in a plate and forced Fan to eat it. They melted plastic on her body and rubbed sharp spices into her bleeding wounds, watching her in pain. To prevent Fang from thinking of escaping, the skin of her feet was set on fire. She cried because of the burns, but for that she received only more torture, table objects in all orifices, blows with iron bars, vegetables in her mouth and beatings on the head. After several weeks of unbearable torture, the girl was tied with a wire and hung from a hook sticking out of the ceiling. The girl was used as a punching bag. Ah Fong vividly remembered her murderous appearance and the rotting stains all over her body. All this she described to the police officers. One day when she went to visit Chan, she saw men throwing boxing punches at Fong's dangling head, probably 50 punches at least. Although Ah Fong came to the staff with this story, she herself also took part in the bullying. On this day, she saw that the unfortunate Fan showed no signs of life. When she was hit on the head, her head was like a sack of sugar, flying from side to side. The men didn't know what to do with the body, so they went back to video games. After another night of drinking, Chan decided that Fang's body should be destroyed. After all, it would be easier to hide the evidence. The friends carried the body into the bathtub and began to cut it up with a saw. They separated the skull from the flesh and began to boil it in a pot from which they had recently eaten soup. The rest of the body was boiled to avoid odor. The organs were placed in bags. The cooked parts were placed in garbage cans. The boiled head, which had been skinned off, was put into a rag doll mermaid Hello Kitty. They also left a piece of Fan's teeth and her few internal organs, which they kept in a plastic bag. However, despite the criminals' attempts to hide their deeds, justice did catch up with them. The turning point in the story was the nightmares that haunted 14-year-old Ah Ho Fong. In her dreams, a tormented Fang appeared, threatening to leave her alone until she told the police. These visions frightened the teenager so much that she could not bear the burden of secrecy and decided to contact law enforcement. Ah Ho Fong, realizing the seriousness of the situation and her involvement in the crime, set conditions for her confession. She demanded complete anonymity and concealment of the details of her participation in the torture. This was an attempt by the young girl to minimize the consequences of her actions and avoid responsibility for her complicity in the crime. The police, after receiving information from Ah Ho Fong, agreed to inspect the apartment in question. However, faced with the scale and brutality of the crimes described, the investigators were initially distrustful of the story. The story of horrific torture seemed so unbelievable that they doubted its veracity. This initial reaction of the police demonstrates how shocking and beyond ordinary criminality the events that took place in that apartment were. However, despite the initial skepticism, the decision to verify the information was a key step in solving this horrific crime. Already examining the crime scene, investigators saw a bloody bathtub, some organs in the refrigerator, bloodstains on the floor, curtains and even cutlery. Well, and finally, the very rag doll, in the head of which they found a skull. Where is the truth and where is the fantasy of a schoolgirl? It is unknown. Unfortunately, because of the condition of the remaining parts of Fan's body, the police and forensics could not determine the cause of death. After all, the girl claimed that Fan died of torture, and Chan and his friends assured that the girl died of a drug overdose. And in order not to get caught by the police, decided to get rid of the body in this way. As a result of a long and complex trial, the three accused men were found guilty. However, contrary to the expectations of many, they were not convicted of premeditated murder, but of manslaughter. This decision was made by the jury, which concluded that the death of Fan Man-yee was not the original purpose of the detainees. This verdict caused mixed reactions in the community and among human rights activists. Throughout the trial, the three defendants strenuously denied their guilt of torturing Fan. Each of them tried to shift responsibility to the others, creating a confusing picture of the events. They steadfastly denied all allegations of ill treatment of the victim, which complicated the work of the investigation and the court. The defendants' lawyers put forward the theory that Fan's death was caused by a drug overdose. This line of defense contradicted the testimony of Fan's husband, who claimed that she had stopped using drugs after the birth of their son. This discrepancy in testimony was one of the key points of the trial. Despite the best efforts of the defense and the defendants' attempts to avoid responsibility, the court imposed a harsh sentence. All three men were given life sentences. An important aspect of the sentence was the condition that the convicted men would not be eligible for parole review for a minimum of 20 years. The sentence was a reflection of the gravity of the offense and society's desire for justice. However, it also raised questions about the adequacy of punishment for such a brutal crime and the possibility of rehabilitating such criminals. The fate of 14-year-old Ah Ho Fong, on the other hand, was different. The girl, who actively cooperated with the investigation and provided key testimony, was exempted from criminal responsibility. Her role in solving this horrific crime was crucial. When asked about her involvement in the torture, Aha's response shocked many. She was completely senseless, and it wasn't fun to play with her anymore. But we continued anyway because there was nothing else to do. I did it for curiosity, just to see what it feels like to hurt someone. These words revealed the depth of moral decline and indifference that gripped not only the adult perpetrators, but also the teenager. Given Ah Ho Fong's pivotal role as a key witness in the case, and the value of her testimony, law enforcement decided to fully exempt her from prosecution. This decision has caused mixed reactions in the community, raising questions about justice and juvenile responsibility for serious crimes. The story of the Hello Kitty murder remained one of the most mysterious and shocking to the people of Hong Kong. Society is divided in its attitude towards the case. Some fully believe Ah Ho Fong's account, while others believe it to be an exaggerated story of a prostitute's domestic death. that has become an urban legend. However, the severity of the sentence, life imprisonment for the three main defendants, shows the seriousness of the crime and the perception of justice. If you are impressed by this story, don't forget to give a like to this video. It will help others to learn about this story. Subscribe to our channel not to miss new episodes about the most mysterious and shocking crimes. What do you think about this case? Do you believe all the details of the story, or do you think that the truth may be somewhere in the middle? Share your opinion in the comments below. We're interested to hear your point of view. Thanks for being with us. See you in the next issue.